Well, I'm very, very pleased to be here and to get an award in honor of Cassandra Pyle because she's really done a lot of things, and I think I may have followed her in some of the areas where she worked, or perhaps was there a little bit earlier. But she was fantastic, and it's a pleasure and an honor for me to get this award. I think curriculum development for universities and working with universities on partnerships in various countries. And at one point, I managed university to university partnerships in 32 countries. And the exchanges were just fantastic. You met all sorts of people, and you found out that the pros and the cons of universities didn't vary greatly from country to country. But the people in those universities made all the difference in the world. So I enjoyed that contribution that I was able to make. It's not that I was the only one involved in the process, but I wrote the proposals and got the funding and managed the project. I think that more than anything else in 32 countries. It's interesting. I was sparked initially in 1959 when the American Student Associations were invited to Cuba, and I was one of the people who went. And that was my first international foray in 1959. I then went to graduate school in Massachusetts, finished my university degree, and then went to graduate school in Massachusetts. And I was a bit concerned by the information that I was getting from my professors about what's going on internationally, especially in Africa. And I did my coursework and decided I would join a Columbia University project called Teachers for East Africa. We're still meeting since 1962, those of us who were in those countries. And their teachings were less sensitive than I expected, and I wanted to go and see for myself. So an image that I got from the specialist in the early 60s, 60, 61, sparked my interest in going to see for myself what was actually going on. And my first country was Uganda. I did 2 years. It was the Columbia University project. Then another 2 years of a University of Massachusetts project. And I learned an awful lot, because I think in international exchanges, you give and you receive. I was very happy at learning what people were doing in their universities, in their high schools, and in working with USAID on those programs. So I guess I was sparked by what I saw as a deficit in the teaching process. But I found that in these days of social media, people know more, they interact more, and are better able to make some determination about what's going on rather than doing a single research project. I think there can be more areas of cooperation. Usually when USAID or State Department are supporting programs, there are limited areas. My work with Fulbright showed more areas that people could exchange their ideas and their knowledge base as well. And I think that we have to continue to expand the borders of the types of international exchanges that are going on between America and other countries and other universities. Nowadays, I'm finding that there are more and more exchanges in areas like climate change, in areas like reforms, legal reforms in various countries. There were not many in the early days. And it's not just pedagogy. People are interested in issues. I am, when I leave here, I'm going to the University of California at Riverside, where there's a workshop on women in transitional societies, university women in transitional societies. I'll be a consultant in that. So that kind of topic you did not have in the early days, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And now we're getting there. We're looking at what happens to people when there are wars, when there are transitions that are good or bad, and what universities are doing to assist those women especially, because they're not getting as much attention as they might have and as they had in the past, because the focus was on the males. Interestingly, I'm seeing the difference in the U.S. versus the difference in those countries. We usually think of development projects as the U.S. sharing their knowledge and development. But more and more, we're seeing that universities from other countries are sometimes trailblazing in areas that we are not doing in this country. So that was an aha moment when at a university where I was working, we got an artist who works in, he's a Benin bronze sculptor, and we had it in Atlanta. And the artists from almost all of the universities in Atlanta came to the kiln to see how he processed these bronze sculptures. And so it wasn't just the university where I was, it was universities throughout the Atlanta area that benefited from it. So that's one example of how American universities benefit from an exchange with someone from the outside. I would like for small universities that don't have study abroad programs or even, let's say, a center or a headquarters that deal with international exchanges to have more opportunities. In certain parts of the country, and as I served on the Fulbright board and we read those applications, there were many cities and states that we got a lot of applications from, but there are other states and cities where we got 1, 2, very few, so that the totality of the U.S. is not being shared with those abroad. There are different perspectives. And also, the students who come over, many of them know the big name institutions. They think they can get into Harvard and Yale and MIT and Stanford and the rest. And they don't realize that some of the other institutions have excellent programs. So I would like international education to be broadened in the United States as well as abroad, because there is much to learn in places in Colorado, in Oklahoma, where you get a fair number of applications from Texas, but Kansas, a lot of states and cities are just not involved at the level that I think would be very good. So if we can make it possible for all states and small universities in the bigger states to have an opportunity to engage in international exchanges, I think it would be good for everyone.